Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Made from Grapes Live. My name is Liam, and together with Severin, we are Made from Grapes. Um, this week, we've got a really interesting topic to talk about. We're talking about wine, cider, and beer, which maybe some people wouldn't think are very similar at all, but yeah, hopefully we can change your mind on that and talk about some of the commonalities. Jihad, you Jihad, you on Grunting Growler in Finiston. Um,
That's it.
he hosted us for our very first pop up. So yeah, we've got a kind of long lasting connection with Jihad, and Grant as well. Grant, obviously, I think everyone knows, was in the band Frightened Rabbit, but has now got his own cider company called Restalk Cider. So yeah, it'll be really good to hear more about what you're up to now. Okay, Jihad, we'll come to you first. Yeah, what are you drinking for us with us tonight?
So today I am drinking lambic beer, spontaneous fermented beer by Boon, and it's Kriek. So it is a spontaneous fermented lambic that's been aged on fresh cherries and then bottled for secondary re-fermentation. So cheers to that, guys.
And Grant, what are you drinking tonight?
I have a bottle of Old Man and the Bee by cider maker from Herefordshire called Little Pomona. It's a blend of 3 different cider apples, Harry Masters Jersey, Ellis Bitter, and Foxwhelp. And it's a 2017 vintage, so it's been fermented, spontaneous fermentation initially, and then it's been matured for over a year, and then blended
Okay, cool.
together.
I hope everyone's keeping track of some of these terms because we're going to come back to them later on. Maybe get a wee bit of an explanation. Sev, you're drinking a pet nat.
Yeah, pet nat. So I'm going to show you that. So you use actually a cap and you open it like a proper beer. You can tell that's something I do quite a lot. Oh yeah, it works. Okay. So
Wow.
again, natural fermentation. So this is Sylvain Martinez, Pet Nat, Chenin Blanc. But yeah, we can talk a bit more in details about the product itself. I'm gonna have a sip just now. Yeah, delicious. Yeah,
Cool.
Delicious.
Okay, so
yeah.
Jihad, you said there that yours was natural fermentation. What do we mean by natural fermentation?
Yeah, so I guess I wouldn't necessarily say natural fermentation just because it's not necessarily a huge terminology within, I guess, beer, but it's all pretty much the same thing when you connect it to wine. So a lambic beer, spontaneous fermented, basically what they do is they start making the beer, they take the sugary water, they put it into this huge thing called a cool ship. And it's best way to describe it is like a big kiddie pool. Really, the sugary water. They let it cool overnight, and during that time, the natural yeast and bacteria inoculates or falls into this sugary water and then creates beer. They then ship off that inoculated big, huge oak barrels, and they let them age for like 1, 2, 3 years at a time. And then after that, they start to blend them or age them on fresh fruits and so forth. So yeah, that's what I have there.
Okay, so listening to that, I'm picking out a couple of things that are slightly different, but also quite similar to like the natural fermentation process in wine. So specifically, I'm thinking about the spontaneous fermentation. You're saying that like the yeast in the air kind of fall into this open pool. So
of course, so they don't pitch the yeast into it. It's natural from whatever's there.
So like again, Sev, come to you like with natural wine. We talk about natural fermentation in wine. It's the yeasts that exist in the vineyard.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely wild yeast that's been used, especially so pet nat is actually a short word for pétillant naturel. So natural, sparkling, natural, bubbly. So yeah, there's actually no rules for this type of wine about the grapes, about the region. And here, so obviously, so wild yeast, no additives, no sulfite added, most of the time unfiltered, some not if you're really into nature. And those wild yeast, Donna brings up lees, the dead yeast brings that creaminess texture, the lactic acid, so different kind of aroma profile into the wine. So it's much more kind of a fun and happy wine type you have. Really less, when you think about champagne example, also think about where I'm sure you had champagne, prosecco, the bubbles, and they're much more present. But here it's much more gentle, kind of a more like a frisante, gentle fizz really. So more kind of a breakfast, brunch, lunch, afternoon tea, sparkling wine type. So
And Grant, I think there's a lot of similarities in the way that the cider's made as the way the wine's made. Obviously, them both being fruits.
Yeah, I mean it's almost identical. Just apples instead of grapes, really. I think. I mean, an apple, you need to mill it before you press it to get the juice out of it. But other than that, really, it's essentially the same. So the natural fermentation in cider would be milling, pressing the apples, putting them into whatever container it is you're going to use to ferment, and then leaving it, essentially. So you've got the yeasts that are in the whatever vessel you use, whether that's a barrel. Obviously, if you're using stainless steel, that's generally they wouldn't have that. They'd be very clean. But when within the apples themselves, the yeasts that are there that are from the orchard and in the air, as Jehad said as well. So yeah, it's very similar to wine. And again, with you also starting to see pet nat ciders more commonly now, where we finish the first fermentation in the bottle. I think what's probably more widely known is the process of a secondary fermentation within the bottle, where the first fermentation is finished. Then you reintroduce sugar and yeast to create a secondary fermentation. But you're seeing a lot more pet nats now, because I think that's what more people are looking for, really.
Yes, so actually, sorry guys, but so you were said about adding the yeast and the sugar, like actually the second fermentation, like we do in champagne. So that was much more into the classic style, and so now they see that actually the primary fermentation, it's actually a much more cool style of product, lively, and interesting stuff to drink.
I guess it's a bit harder to kind of control, really. Certainly with cider, which it can add to the interest in it. Can also mean that doesn't always go right, But yeah, it's both have their different merits. But a pet nat for me is just generally something that interests me a lot more.
I mean, I found that I've got a Col Fondo Prosecco here, and personally, I find that style of Prosecco just a little bit more interesting. I think everyone knows Prosecco is like it's kind of ubiquitous now, kind of clear party bubbles. But yeah, Col Fondo was the way that it used to be done before they made it, and the way that they make it now. So the way they make it now, they made it in a tank. They make it in a tank. I think that the method was devised in around 1910. So before that, they were doing what Grant just talked about and putting the part fermented juice into the bottle to finish fermenting. So then again, like with Col Fondo, I think the literal translation means with the bottom, meaning that the lees are still in the bottle with it. So it's cloudy. There's a bit of sediment there. Because it's sitting in the bottle, and constantly getting the interaction with the dead yeast cells, that gives more of those kind of yeasty aromas, some sourness as well. So that there's that, yeah, the kind of flavor profiles I think that kind of stride across like wine, beer, and cider. Some of those kind of, yeah, the sourness. Jihad, what flavors are
Yeah.
you getting from yours?
Yeah, so what I love about like kind of lambics is the beautiful kind of balance they have to them. So with this one, there's a little bit of acidity, a little bit of dryness, all kind of wrapped together with like the really kind of strong bubbles that it has, like the really kind of fluffy bubbles, if anything. So the flavor profiles in this one are coming from three things predominantly, I suppose. Coming from, obviously, if you see the color of it, the fruit, the cherries, the fresh cherries added into it. But then, two things that you can't see, the yeast and the bacteria. So the bacteria, there's typically two types of bacteria that give the sourness. I won't go into too much detail, but they basically feed on the sugars within the beer, give off a byproduct of lactic acid, and those are the tart acidic flavors that kind of hit you in the back of the cheeks there. The other probably most interesting aspect of it is the kind of funk and dryness that you're getting from the natural yeast in there. So the natural yeast is called Brettanomyces, which I think you find in wines and you find in ciders and so forth. What I find so interesting is there's like no way to like predict how this is going to work. It always just kind of does its own thing and works and brews completely mental because again, it's unpredictable. But the cool thing about this yeast is it has the ability to break down every single sugar within it. It can break down, simple chain sugars like most yeast. Then it can break down the long chain complex sugars, which regular yeast typically wouldn't be able to do that. So that dryness in there really kind of adds some things to it. Again, these yeasts are also adding like those funky flavors, those kind of barn bar, wet horse blanket characteristic, which sounds disgusting, but the way that I always describe it is that blue cheese smells like dirty socks, and we all love blue cheese anyways, right? This smells like wet horse blanket, and again, you shouldn't like it, but there's something that's it just draws you into it. I think the last thing about Brettanomyces is the ability to survive for a very long period. Most yeast varieties will just go it over a certain period, but this just keeps working away, not only to break down sugar chains, but other compounds. So within the beer, the compound of cherry, and over time we'll start breaking those down and creating new flavor profiles. So when you think beer typically needs to be drank as fresh as possible, but if you look at the back of this bottle, it's best before 2038. Because again, over time will just completely change. I don't know if you'll be able to pick up on, where's it at again? There at the bottom there.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's a bit like wine as well, where it's like it's actually a living thing. It can change over time. The more it takes on, well, you're talking about the yeast activity in the bottle, but then with wine, there's also the exposure to oxygen and the kind of the way that it becomes oxidized over time.
Yeah.
So I've got a question here for Jihad from Connor, your friend Connor.
Yeah.
I got into natural minimal intervention wine through my love of wild beers. Have you noticed an increase in customers coming from the other side and discovering these beers through their love of wine?
These beers. Oh, definitely. And it's to be able to see the huge crossover between the two. Like I have my beer lovers who are now trying to get into natural wine, and vice versa. There's new wine drinkers that are coming to us, and they're like, "Oh my God, tried this beer for the first time, Lambic, Boon, Cantillon." I'm like, "Yes, amazing, love this," and it's just cool to see the crossover and the huge similarities they share between one another. And again, I think a lot of people, like a lot of beer drinkers, go, "I don't like wine." It's not that you don't like wine; you haven't found the right one. Same thing with wine drinkers. Like, "I don't like beer." It's not that you don't like beer; you just haven't found the right one. And the same thing with cider as well.
Grant, how have you found like with your customers and like trying to maybe reach new customers with a different style of cider?
Yeah, I guess cider, maybe interestingly, sits sort of in between the beer and the wine world. It's, you know, historically, certainly in the UK, it's packaged, it's drank like a beer, but it's made like a wine. So cider's kind of got a foot in both camps, which is good and bad, because the type of cider that I'm selling is certainly not what you would generally drink in the same way you would drink a beer. Of course, you know, I do have some that are in cans, and but the majority are in these 750ml bottles. So I've found more of a connection with what I'm doing with the natural, specifically natural wine world as well, but certainly the wine world, where you're having a sharing bottle that you would have with food, and not only have it with food, but maybe even specifically pair it with food as well, which is another sort of concept that is new to a lot of people with cider. So it's, and Jehad and I have spoken about this before as well, where I'm finding that I really need to pour it for people. I need that I'm selling to make them realise what I be, as opposed to just Strongbow or Magners or Bulmers or White Lightning. You know, these are the ciders that people are used to, or even, you know, that's probably Scotland, even in the southwest of England, where the cider heritage really is. A lot of people associate that with, you know, cloudy, scrumpy, that has no, you know, accurate ABV, and it's just going to make your legs like jelly and make you feel, you know, awful. So it's pitching cider as something that's a bit more refined, and also there's a story to the variety, the vintage, the way it's been made, who's made it, where the apples have been grown. Terroir is another issue that you could spend a lot of time talking on. So yeah, but I have found that when I have poured it for people, even when I take bottles out of my case, people are like, yeah. Oh right, you know, they were maybe expecting me to come with a bunch of cans and pint, a bag of cans and pint bottles, you know, which again, still a lot of people still do that, and they do it well. But yeah, it's trying to sort of push cider into a place where it has the same amount of respect as craft beer and wine.
You just said that, the word craft beers, craft cider, and actually you can tell there's a link with also natural wines. It's about a work, a respect of your product, while you drink from the start and to the end in your glass. Jehad, when you were saying that, we're talking about people that drinking beer, they're drinking wine, etc. But what I realized from my experience also, that some people, they actually don't drink those conventional wines, mainstream type wines, but from the beer drinkers, they like the sour type. They go straight into natural wines. They just like don't even look about what has been done before into the classic wines, and that is really interesting to see that's the link in all craft and style. And
so I've got a question here for Grant. The natural cider scene is very much a new thing in Glasgow, and your company is at the forefront of that. Where did you first experience this culture, and what drew you towards these ciders?
I first experienced not long ago, to be honest, but only in the past sort of 2 or 3 years. I mean, I was aware of, you know, nicer ciders, better ciders being available in Bristol specifically. When the band would tour the UK, there's a shop that's no longer there, I don't think, called Bristol Cider Shop. Basically, I would go there, I would buy a load of ciders and bring them back up. But in terms of the process of how they were made and what went into them, at that point, still wasn't really that interested in that. In that, I was more just like I preferred the taste. I didn't really delve into why. So it's only in the past 2 or 3 years that I've discovered bottles like this. And to be honest, Little Pomona, the cider that I'm drinking tonight, they're a very new cider maker, but what they're doing, and one maker in the US called Eves, who are upstate New York. When I first tried their ciders, I was just kind of blown away by what it could be.
What was it that was so different about it?
With the Eves one, was the first of all was the presentation. It's called Albee Hill. It's in a 750ml bottle, but it's a Riesling style bottle, so it's kind of long and thin. The aromas from it were not something I'd experienced before. I guess also probably the first realization most people who are going to move into drinking these ciders is that you're not going to taste it and straight away go apples, because there are no additives, there's no flavorings, there's no sweeteners being added to enhance that. So you'll find that you might drink it and initially be like, well, I don't really like that because it doesn't taste like apple juice. So it's finding a lot more in the drink that I found really interesting, and I think the sort of gateway for me also was whiskey, and when people say that they don't like whiskey, I think Jehad mentioned this earlier. Someone who says they don't like beer or they don't like wine, it's just that you haven't tried the right one yet, And I was like that with whiskey for years. I was like, whiskey's not for me, and then you sort of learn about it, you try more, your palate becomes more refined, and you realise that there's a lot more to it than just a burning alcohol sensation.
The subtleties in the place that it's from.
Absolutely,
I think that's the same inside as well. Then, yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's so much you can do right from the very beginning of the process with cider. Where like you said, terroir. Where is your orchard? What is the soil like in that orchard? The amount of varieties of apple is incredible, because it doesn't follow that you get the apple variety from the seed of that apple. So there are hundreds of thousands of apple varieties that have naturally appeared. So to get specific varieties, you have to graft scions of wood from one tree onto the rootstock of another. So that for that reason, there are people making cider with so many different styles of raw product. And then once you've done that, you can then ferment it in a different variety of vessels. There's Coevre clay pots that are under the ground. There's stainless steel tanks. There's oak barrels. And from
very
there,
much like wine, no? Very much
exactly,
like wine.
totally like wine. And then from there, you go into maturation, and maturation can happen for as little or as long as you like. And again, it's about what vessel it's in, and what flavour that imparts, or what flavour that doesn't impart. So there's just so much beyond. Shall I have the strawberry and kiwi or the pear Copperberg tonight? And that's what's wrong with the kind of perception of cider or drinks like that.
Yeah. And Jehad, I'll just ask you the same question. Is Jehad there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Hello. Excellent. Yeah, for me, like,
I was like, yeah, I was.
You guys can all hear me okay, right?
Still here,
Yeah.
My beer journey started like anybody, or at least from America, beer pong in university, pretty much, right? red party cups and all the rest of it. But that's obviously not like real beer drinking. I guess it still was at university. I had a really great friend when I lived in Indiana, and we had a local microbrewery there that we used to get growler fills from, so like draft beer to take away in like a reusable bottle. And we used to go fill our growlers up there all the time, and he kind of got me into it. And again, I think, similar to Grant in the sense that I would drink this and understand this is completely different from whatever ever tasted before, and just in complete awe of like what it could be. But I wasn't necessarily like, going into the details and the knowledge of fermentation, the ingredients, and the process. I think that was more so like, it sparked the interest. And I think after I moved into the UK, I slowly started dabbling, finding some really cool producers, learning that there's different styles, out there. There, I think there's like BJCP, so Beer Judge Certificate Program in America, and they recognize something like 130 different styles and varieties of beers. And that's only growing every year because there's like, new methods and new way of putting the ingredients together and so forth. So yeah, I guess long story short, started university, sparked the interest from a local microbrewery, buying local, and then just kind of finding more interesting things to dabble with and so forth.
Yeah, so Sev, we were actually chatting earlier on about the kind of younger drinkers seem to be a bit more attracted to this style, and about like specifically like the yeasts and that sour style, like it's present in like loads of stuff. So like sourdough loaves or kombucha.
Kombucha. And that.
On you go.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. No. I mean, which is very funny because actually, but for the pet nut example, so go back to Gazouillis from Sylvain Martinez. So it means twittering. So it's a perfect word for today. Springy, summery day. But yeah, pet nut is it's the oldest way of making sparkling wine. I'm sure I'm sure a lot of you knows that. So 15th century, that's when they started. And 100 years later, you had champagne. So and actually the idea is like, the story is like Dom Pérignon went to Limoux, which is a village in the Languedoc. And this is where he get the recipe of making sparkling wine. And then he adapted, created a different way than the second fermentation style with adding, the sugar and yeast. But anyway, that's another story. But as you said, is that actually younger people are more interested into that very old style than you think it is. And but we can tell, like, just like think about the way we've been eating and drinking 20 years ago or so, even more, your big Chardonnay, your big fatty McDonald's stuff, and, so fat, sugar, and style,
Rich
and
French food,
for the last maybe
rich French food, like creamy French food.
Yeah, voila. Well, come on, you. No. Cross the Atlantic, please, okay? So, but what we've seen for the last 20 years or so, even more than that, is really much into that Asian type food, even in the north. So the fermented food, and so having that umami note, and then we find also into the wine with this wild yeast, and obviously cider and beers. And you can tell the palate is more refined. You need your sour, you need your bitter, you need your freshness, the terroir, and hopefully, this is definitely something that's come here, and it's so alternative also. And when you think about Glasgow, this is the alternative city, no, Grant? I mean, music, art, everything. So why not, food and alcohol? And
I think the really interesting thing about natural wines, outside of the unique flavors they have, is that the lack of rules. I love that. And I think that's why it sparked so much interest to people that maybe not been wine drinkers previously. I think if you don't know enough about wines, it can be very intimidating to learn about and I'm lacking on my kind of vocabulary for wine, but in terms of like the appellations and the rules that apply to these certain areas. And same thing with whiskey, there's certain rules. And again, once again, that could be so intimidating for anybody that doesn't know anything about it. And with natural wine, with the less rules involved, it's just like, I can get down with this. I can learn as I go. I'm not going to be upsetting anybody if I'm going to be saying something wrong and so forth. I think that's what I like about it right now. So,
yeah, there's a similar thing in cider in the US. Actually, there's a lot of great cider coming out of the US at the moment because of what Jehad just mentioned about natural wine, where there are cider over in the US even the word cider is what how they describe apple juice. So if you go somewhere and you ask for a cider, they'll think that you want an apple juice.
The juice.
So so hard cider is what is historically what our cider is called there. But they, long story short, during Prohibition, a lot of orchards were destroyed in the US. So their cider making heritage took a real blow around that time. So it's been a kind of slow build back up to something that it's at, to where it's at now. And I guess because of that destruction, there's sort of a lot of people started with a completely clean slate. So didn't have quite the same rules and history that we still have here, and it's allowed a lot more innovation. It's not all great, there's a lot of people pushing boundaries that should just be kept as boundaries, but that's also that's part of it, isn't it? But yeah, there's a lot of kind of.
It sounds a bit like what happened with like New World wines.
Yeah, absolutely.
People like, so take Australia for example, like they didn't have the same history and stuff. They weren't bound by the same rules, like you were saying. So you were getting a lot more kind of experimental styles and
yeah.
But sorry, but Liam, that's what you were saying. We were talking about that a few days ago. That actually you come into the wine world without really having that, the classic background. And that's why you just like had that open-mindedness, okay, this is I love, this is I don't like, etc. But you don't, have those rules and you have to follow. No, you have that free-minded.
Yeah, I think that's been a theme actually, since we've started doing the programs. I think because Lily was talking about it as well when she was on. She wasn't like from a kind of classically trained background. So
yes.
She found that actually helped. I find it helps me just to be open-minded and just take everything as it is.
Yeah.
The nice thing about beer though is like beer doesn't have rules except this. Lambics do have rules. It's like one of the like very few things in beer that actually have it, and they never used to. But the guy that owns this brewery, Kriek Boon, he fell in love with this style, and like he quickly realized that he wanted to start up a lambic brewery. And at that point, there were no kind of like laws or rules or like a constitution for this style, but he pushed it really hard to create it. Like lambic is like champagne; it has to be made in a very specific part of Belgium. It can only be made there to be called lambic. And there's certain laws in terms of how you ferment and how long it needs to be fermented and how you can blend them together and so forth. There are people making lambic style beers that are spontaneous fermented within cool chips, but again, they can't be called lambics because they're not from that specific region within Belgium.
So I've got another question here for Sev this time. As a somm, would you consider introducing natural cider and beer into a drinks pairing? And is there a place for it in a fine dining restaurant?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I could tell. No, but I mean, the last work at the Gannett as a sommelier, you could tell I've got that classic background, guys. Sorry, but I've been lucky, in London, as I said always, that this is the platform of the wine world, and I've been lucky to work there, where I had the opportunity to try those natural wines like 15 years ago, 10 years ago. But I had that before that, my classic background, and then I just carry on into the classic. But then you realize when you start to ready to drink those natural wines, or not even, though you don't need to be an ayatollah, just being completely dogma about natural wine, but at least you have a minimum of respect of what you're doing, what you produce. But especially when I was at the Gannet or other restaurant here in Scotland, you could tell that there's more and more demand of having, cider or beer or even actually soft drink like kombucha type plain, especially so that you could see that into the north restaurant with Noma. Obviously, this is how they bring in the things. First, because of the alcohol. A Petnat example is really a low type alcohol. We talked about that earlier, about the ABV in cider and in beers. A Petnat is between 10 to 12, usually. When we talk about the beers and cider, some they have 10% or so alcohol. So it's really the idea of drinking better, less alcohol, and really food friendly, etc. So yeah, there's definitely space for them. Yeah.
What is it do you think about them, and maybe what things would you pair with what? Like, to give a couple of examples, like what?
But I mean, the apple. I mean, you think about I don't know. Here, classic dish like scallop and fresh apple. Okay, so scallop and fresh apple, like a green apple, the Granny Smith gives that zing zing here. So definitely a cider. I mean, I'm not that very familiar into cider or into beer, but you can tell that once you give that, as we said, that once you have that natural process where the acidity is high and there is a complexity about aromas, you can definitely play with food. This is what you need to pair with. But then when you think, so what you think, maybe, I don't know, maybe Grant or Roger can tell me about that. So what you're looking for is something for this dish, something the scallop with the Granny Smith apple, something with zing, but with a bit of creaminess. You feel that bit of the dead yeast, the lees texture. But then you have example, think about pork dish and like cooked apple all in the oven. So you need something a bit more richer on texture. So very different style on the texture and aroma profile, but they're there. They're there. And definitely you can find that in some beers and some cider. I'm sure.
Yeah, I think you can find a cider to pair with any dish, in the same way you can wine. There are ciders that are big and bold and tannic that you would pair similarly to a red wine, and there are ciders that are lighter and fresher and more acidic, and and then again introducing whether it's still or carbonated, and these all have a big impact on what you would pair it with. I mean, pork, obviously, hams, things that are high in salt. A lot of ciders pair really well with.
The acidity and the sourness just kind of cleans your palate. Like.
Yeah. So it cuts through that. In Spain, for example, they're traditionally the sidra that they drink is completely bone dry, really high acidity, and the way that they drink it and pour it is completely different from anywhere else. They pour from a and they pour only a very small amount, and it gives it natural carbonation for a minute or so. But you pour a small amount, you drink it. Same way as they eat food, they eat small bits and pieces and tapas, and it's quite high in fat and salt, and and the cider that they make there, specifically in the north of Spain, is perfect for that kind of matching. But you bring that here. I still love to drink any Spanish cider you can get over here, but it really is all about the situation with that, and what you're drinking it with, and where you are, and you know, the weather, everything about it. You know, it's multi-sensory, and that's the Spanish cider is probably the best example of matching and pairing something with a specific food.
Yeah, you should have been a sommelier, Grant. Perfect. You should have been a sommelier. That's just perfect, you know.
Well, we call it a pommelier.
Voilà. Très bien. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, Jehad, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still
sorry,
here.
Just because your screen's frozen, I had to check.
Oh, right. I don't know what it's all about.
Yeah,
Sorry about
no
that,
worries,
guys.
No worries. Yeah, I was saying to Sev earlier as well, like one thing that I thought we could maybe just touch on is maybe like some of the commonalities with the packaging and the marketing now between like say craft beer and like natural wine, and again cider as well. Like, do you think that yeah, well, obviously like you have experience of selling beers and stuff in the shop. Are people attracted to the different packaging?
Packaging is probably the most important factor when it comes to craft beer at the moment. And craft beer is probably going down a bit of a different route. So we went from, you know, everything being in bottles to now everything literally being canned. You know, when I first opened the shop up 3 years ago, it was a struggle to sell anything in a can. Now it's the complete opposite. If I have something in a bottle, turn their nose up to it. Unless it's like, you know, large format, 750 ml bottle, something like really high ABV, something lambic and sour. Those are the kind of exceptions for it. So it's really interesting to see how it's completely changed. I guess for me, what I would like to see, being like the beer person, I'd like to start seeing some like really interesting. I think that would break down a lot of barriers for our customers, you know, because it would kind of make that connection to beer with it. And I guess, I don't know how it would work. Actually, it should work exactly the same for wine, because the reason why cans are actually better for beer at the moment is, I guess, a few different reasons. The seal top's a lot tighter, so no oxygen can get into the liquid. So, you know, very low likelihood of it getting oxidized. Hops are extremely sensitive to UV light. So because like it's not got like an amber bottle, no light can penetrate through the can, protects you from UV contamination 100%. When a beer gets UV contaminated, it basically smells like skunk. If you ever smelled like Peroni's in a green bottle, and green bottles only protect about like 95, 96% UV light. So when you pop it open, it has that skunk. Only way to put it, a lot of people recognize out here is like that kind of weedy smell, right? And then the other cool thing about packaging into cans is that it weighs so much less. So when you're shipping, there's not as much CO2 emissions and so forth. So yeah, I don't know. It'd just be really interesting to see maybe some really cool natural ciders, really cool natural wines put into cans and see what happens.
I mean, we talk about Jehad, we talk about the can in wine in can, etc. But something that is definitely was made from grapes, the idea, and then there's other places where they thought about that as a wine bar, etc. Is wine on tap.
Yes.
You know, that's the thing, you know, not having the idea of most of the time when you go to a brasserie, when you go to a pub, absolutely. When you ask for your glass of Pinot Grigio, whatever it is, you actually never see the bottom. Yeah. So, but then when the idea of having, so from the vineyard, from the winery, you obviously with stainless steel aging and straight into that small cask. And then straight to into the glass of the consumer. You think about like in one cask tap. You're thinking about like it's like 40 bottles in one go or 30 bottles in one go. How many cases of wine? How many bottles have been carried? And there's that repetition of exercise, the always opening a bottle, etc. Which is really, really chronic bad situation for people working into hospitality. Then also training, how to pour a glass of wine, corked. And obviously also the eco-friendly print. And that's something I hope in the future we can look at this also. There's I think it's crying out.
I think
to push into the direction.
I think a big part of it as well that might help is taking some of the formality out of wine. Make it really accessible for people. Because everybody's obviously used to seeing like beer or cider or whatever coming out of a tap. So if we can do the same with wine, I think that would help. I suppose, Grant, as well, you were maybe saying that you wanted to add some formality to cider, though.
I think it's there. It's just about bringing it to people. It's cider makers are certainly doing it. So it's not about, I guess it's more. It's not that you want to add formality to an existing product. That's the other thing at the moment. It's very much showing people what I have here, and what they normally drink in the pub are different, or very different drinks. So presenting the cider I'm drinking tonight in a can, fine. I personally, but or on draft, these guys do key kegs as well. That's okay. I think with cider, you're almost presenting a whole new drink. So it's not so much that you're kind of saying, oh well, here's your strongbow, but it's in a 750ml bottle. So I guess it's kind of, it is still presenting packaging in a different way, but the contents are completely different. So that's that's both exciting and challenging at the same time. I think it would be harder if that was the case, where you're saying you're drinking the same thing, but it's in a can or it's in a 750ml bottle. That's people probably wouldn't get their head around that, but it is something completely different. So therefore you're expecting a whole new opinion on it. You're not trying to change someone's view on Strongbow or Copperberg or Magners. You're kind of saying, like, completely different drink.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Connor's left us another message as well, saying Made from Grapes should do a pair-off, food pairing with beer, wine and cider, and we should all argue our case. Well, I don't think we've got time for that this week, Connor, sadly. But we could, that could be something cool for the future. Give an idea of the kind of thought process. And again, because like we're obviously drinking stuff that people at home might not be drinking just now, so it's always good as well to like talk about the flavors and stuff, so that they can actually take that with them and when they go and buy wine. Jehad, we saw that you're selling wine now as well, so do you want to give yourself a quick plug about your wine and your beer shop?
It's completely new, and it's something that like I'm a complete novice for, and I'm learning as I go on. So every week it's really exciting because I get to take home, a couple bottles a week and really kind of dabble into it. It's a very small selection at the moment. I think we maybe have like 15, 17 different wines in at the moment. Anytime that I try something, I try to put my review and opinion on our social media so people can understand it. And it's great. Like I'm having these, complete beer drinkers that would never touch anything other than, water, hops, malt, and yeast. And they're dabbling into this natural wine world. So it's really exciting to see. Again, everything's available on our website for click and collect and home deliveries. We're doing home deliveries within a 5-mile radius of our shop, which kind of takes us pretty outside of Glasgow. I see some more of Glasgow in the past 6 to 8 weeks than I have in the past 9 years.
Yeah, loads of tenement stairs as well, yeah.
Absolutely, and that's one thing I'll never get used to. My aerobic and anaerobic capacity is pretty much nothing. So anytime I get to the top of a tenement stair and I see one of my regular customers and they want to have this great conversation with me, I'm ecstatic that I get to speak to him, but at the same time, I'm like, Glasgow is such a beautiful place, so it's good to kind of get out and about and see it all.
Cool. Grant, where can people find your cider?
In Glasgow, you can get it from Good Spirits, Valhalla's Goat. Where else we got? In Edinburgh, Smith and Gertrude are now doing delivery service. Beer Zoo in Portobello in Edinburgh. Where else? I'm about to drop some more off in Edinburgh. The Beer Hive as well in Edinburgh. The Thornwood Bar in Glasgow are doing deliveries. Is it? Yeah. Well, yeah. So he's taken on. He's got Pulped. It's another cider that I do, and he's got some of the Little Pomona as well. And he's been great. He's been really supportive. It's just been a bit weird for me because a lot of my trade is restaurants and on trade. Off trade is good as well, but certainly before this, it was more about restaurants and the sort of pairing thing that we were talking about, Sev, and that because I think people tend to be a bit more willing to sort of take a punt on a glass when they're out for when they're out for a nice meal, and also the places that I do on trade work with have experienced staff there that can make recommendations. But yeah, there's still plenty of places you can find it. I've probably forgotten.
You still have the Eve cider in stock and the beautiful Riesling bottles.
In Grunting Growler. Grunting Growler also.
Can't leave that one out then.
We might be, yeah. I know,
Don't forget that one.
Well, I don't know if you put it on your website though, did you?
It should be. I need to double check. I'll double check that. You might be right.
I remember the day I dropped off the cider with Jehad the first time, and it wasn't until I actually dropped it off that he realised it didn't fit in his fridge.
Yeah,
we had that problem when we've done that.
yeah. The pop-up had to take the shelves.
Sorry, guys.
We took everything out.
Sev, what about you? Where can we get your wines?
I mean, so just like about Sylvain Martinez, so quickly, some people already purchased, and thank you so much for helping me in those moments. As Grant, I was more into trade, but that's so Gazouillis, so Chenin Blanc that you find on Sev's wine. Actually, this wine is not that funky. It's much more kind of a gentle note. 2019, very hot year. So some of the grapes have been bottled-ized, and you can tell to make a sauterne, like a sweet wine. So you get that honey type richness, but at the same time very elegant. So you can have it as an aperitif or as a dessert time. But what I'm very, very keen is there's more wine from Sylvain Martinez on the way. And so that is a Petnat pink style on its way with Grolot. So, yeah, sorry, guys. So here it's 90% Chenin and 10% of Grolot Gris. Huh? And next time, so we've got Rose Bulle, which is a Petnat pink made with Pinot Donis and Grolot. And that is, I think it's going to really please all palate here in Glasgow. And that should be here like in 3 weeks max, hopefully.
Okay, cool.
Hopefully.
Okay, I've put links underneath the video for to like the guys' websites, social media. I've put a couple of articles as well about some of the crossover between beer, wine, and cider. But yeah, thanks again for joining us, guys. So hopefully we can get you back on at some point.
Definitely.
Well, yeah, and thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.